This is the infamous hairstyle that some people suppose is Nubian, but in real life you can see that this Egyptian embodies it. Of course, there are gods like this one that has the same hairstyle, and Nubians like this Nubian enemy that's being swallowed by a lion to show the defeat of this one soldier. This does not mean only Nubians had it, as there are women who are bridegrooms who had the same hair. And as you can see, this is an Egyptian. And some people say, oh, that's a hat. Really? You put a bandana over a hat? That's stupid. As you can see, this priest also has the same hair. These are multiple people who have multiple occupations, who have nothing to do with each other, from various dynasties that have nothing to do with each other, and they all have the same hairstyle, male or female. What could we assume about this? Well, the real answer is this hairstyle is native to Africa, native to the Egyptians, native to the Nubians. You know who you never see have this hairstyle? Middle Easterners, Europeans. For some reason, they never assumed that they had it. But if we look at this final woman over here, we can see that she has the same hairstyle. And she is the wife of one of the last kings of one of the last native kings of Egypt. And as you can see, she is unapologetically resembling the same Egyptians as always, but the hair still looks like the Nubian slash Egyptian hair. So why again do people say they wear Nubian wigs? Remember, this is not the Nubian wig they always accuse it of. Remember when I told you there's variation in hair in Egypt, but it never varies to curly or wavy hair. It's always the variation of short dreadlocks or long dreadlocks or an afro. And we are supposed to believe that the reason why this is because the Egyptians just weren't that good at art, or they were copying Nubian hair because for some reason they were just enamored by Nubians. Even though they were European or Middle Eastern, or somehow they're enamored by foreign tribes. So enamored that they forgot to represent themselves even once. So for some unexplained reason, they refuse to represent themselves as true Europeans. Also, to prove that this is not a wig, take a look at the little girl on the corner. You notice how the hair is not plopped on her head and that it's actually coming out of her hair, which is actually fairly typical in Egypt, especially for kids to have their hair shaved a little bit. But you'll notice that the man has his hair shaved and the woman has all her hair. This is very typical of Egypt. And notice how the woman's hair and the child's hair texture are identical. You know what's funny? A lot of times when people wear wigs, they wear wigs that match their hair rather than wearing a wig that is from another tribe. Of course, in modern days, you have some people who wear wigs from other ethnicities and stuff, but that is different than what's happening here. And of course, you know, the people who wear wigs today, they have other representations of their natural hair. We can find them all over the world. Egypt would be one of the most unique in that this hair would be unbelievably rare, and it would be astonishing to me if they never once represented their real hair. And again, they know how to draw curly hair. I've shown you them drawing them. And in the Fayum mummy paintings, look at the texture of this hair and tell me they look like the Fayum mummy paintings. I dare you. On purpose, the other statue last time that had the foreign looking people in terms of hair. Now, I want you to pay attention to one thing about the deceptiveness of Egyptologists. And this slips by a lot of people, but it will never slip by me. Notice how they guess that the ancient Egyptians were European, native, foreign, or whatever, based on clothes, based on hair texture, based on stuff like that. But when you have the fine mummy paintings, who one, they clearly look Greek. Two, they're wearing Greek symbols on their head and their hair everywhere. And three, they also try to bring up some, uh, let's say, new styles of native Egyptian culture. To them, this is an indication of nothing. To them, it indicates nothing. There's no, hey, maybe they're wearing Greek stuff because they're Greek. Maybe they're trying to embody some of the Egyptian stuff because they lived in Egypt. Maybe they try to embody some of the stuff because they're wearing literally the leaf, they're wearing the clothes of Greeks, they've got the same skin color as Greeks, they've got the same lips, the texture, everything. But to these Egyptologists, this is an indicator of nothing. But we go back to the Nubians and the hair and everything, and then all of a sudden, this disappears. It's like if he's got this hair, it means he's a Nubian. If he's got this clothing, it means he's a Nubian. If he's got this, if he's living in the south, he must be a frontier Nubian. If he's living somewhere closer to the Middle East, he must be a Middle Easterner. How come when it comes to specific things, those are indicators, but then when we have sharp indicators, then they don't matter at all? Example of this is this Egyptian, native Egyptian queen of one of the earliest pharaohs. You can see that her hair is an afro. And look at how the woman is holding it. You see that she's like holding a chunk of it as she's grooming it. This is because she can tell that that's how you handle that type of hair. She's an expert. Secondly, if you look at the darkness of her skin, I mean, that's not even playing around. That's why you should, whenever someone tells you that, oh yeah, Nubians were like the slaves, or the black people were like the slaves of the Egyptians, just laugh in their face. Show them this picture and laugh in their face, because that's the silliest thing I've ever heard in my life ever. Whenever you see people who are like yellowish, that's when they're actually depicted in positions of praise or eunuchs. So it's hilarious when you look at it that they try to twist it to mean that the browner ones are the slaves. But where does this come from? It comes from the 17, 18, and 1900s, when obviously they were fully racist. But let's go back to the hair. Think about this for a second. So this woman's hair is an afro in the true sense of an afro. You can see that her hair is less textured and more straightforward afro. And the woman Kemsit that I showed, she's got short hair. Again, hopping back to what I was saying, African hairstyles being represented in pictures. Whether or not you agree these are black people, they are represented in pictures. Here's a picture of a woman who's being indicated as very dark skinned with afro style hair, and there you go. Now you're gonna say, what's up with a yellow woman? Well, there's two answers to that. One, it's that thing I told you about where they indicate fertility, and how they associate women with glowing, glowing with beauty. But also, they could just be foreign women tending to a queen. But I don't buy that one at all, because I've shown you, and I've got many examples that I'm going to show later. I've shown you that they will show woman in yellow and then show the same woman in brown, showing that it's an indicator of symbolism. You know what's funny? When they show men as yellow, which almost never happens, everybody knows that it's a sign of like a eunuch or something. 99% of the time they show men as brown. And then some people go, well, that's symbolic. And when you ask them what it's symbolic of, they say it's symbolic of men working outside. What? How can working outside be symbolic? Imagine how crappy that is of a symbol. The symbol of working outside is that you get a tan. It's not a symbol, but let's let them continue to make up stories and run with them. But let's look again at one thing about those dreadlocks. We've seen the short ones and I've shown you a lot of them and I'll show you more. But let's look at the longer hair one more time and notice how the texture is consistent. The texture when it's short and when it's long is consistent. I know what you're thinking, but you've only just shown us a few of these ancient Egyptian ones. Well, enjoy this barrage of this hair. Look at this first one, and then look at the second one, a king sitting on the throne. It looks the same. Okay, now look at this long hair, as I showed you I was going to indicate. It's coming out of his head. It's actually parted in the middle, which shows you that the hair is attached to the head. Now look at this one, has the same effect, and the hair is actually sticking out rather than laying on his head, as really it would if it wasn't, you know, a more coarse style. And this again, you see in an indication in another photo. And again, you see the short hair being represented. And again, with another one. And again, now in painting form. And by the way, this is like the default hair for Egyptian gods when they have their heads revealed. But let's talk about one more thing because last time I talked about something, but I didn't go out of my way to prove it. You notice how the cow that's brown is represented with red? Like I told you before, the word desher can also mean brown, and there is no such thing as a red cow. That color is brown that's being depicted over there. And notice it's the exact same color as the pharaoh that I showed, and it's the same color as this god that I'm showing. The gods tend to have this color, desher, as their skin color. In some cases, you get kem as their color, the black color. In some cases, yellow, because the skin of the gods was said to have been made of gold. In some cases, they write that. Now, I'll talk about the religion next time, but let's first do something about religion. Religion is never consistent. So, in some people's head, we think that the ancient Egyptians didn't look at the specific things that are being represented by themselves, but they did. And we'll talk about that next time. But first, let's look at the color. Deshret. You see that? Brown. Notice how the queen is darker than Deshret. She's Kem. And that would have been surely what they would have called her in terms of skin color. If you disagree with me, then I want you to show me a red cow. I would love to see one in real life. So, in summary, we've got three things going on right now. We have the short hair texture, that is afro. We have long afro textured hair. We have the skin color that is brown, which is also represented by red colors, which we know as flesh tones, according to the experts, in which I agree with them because I can see the proof is in the pudding. Because I don't just agree with them whether or not they say something. The skin color of the other woman is darker, and there's under indicators. Also, I want to talk about the clothes of the woman for a second. Don't you find it funny that they always say that women stay indoors? Do these women look like they're dressed to stay indoors to you? Do you really believe that someone dressed like with their breasts out,
with like just a cloth around their waist, or do they look like they're just gonna lay down or sit up or clean the house or whatever? Isn't it funny how the ancient Egyptian women are always dressed like they're going outdoors? I'm not gonna go too deep into this because I've already done a video about this, which I'll do another one later because these points need to be resaid in different ways so that people can get it down their head. And you need to show different, there's so many statues and there's so many vehicles of showing this. Like, this is a completely new angle to the same thing about the wigs and the hair, but you need these different angles in order to make sure it's drilled deep down in the psyche that I'm not coming from one view. I'm not saying that I find one statue and I go, yes, this is from words, statues, and foreigners and everything. Do not debunk something that you do not understand.